Welcome back to the show, and a happy Labor Day weekend, by the way. Great holiday, Labor Day. You get Mondays off, but here's what we see. There's an increase in DUIs during all these holiday weekends, and what do you do if you find yourself in that position? You've had one drink at a party, a Labor Day party at your friend's house, a pool party. One drink, you get pulled over because you're speeding, you ran a stop sign, whatever it is, and they ask you to blow. The question today is to blow or not to blow. That is the question. Rajan Joshi is here. Rajan, welcome. How are you, buddy?
Thank you. Doing good. Thank you.
This must be an uncomfortable question for you a little bit because it's one you get a lot, but it's like, how do you answer that? Because the obvious answer is don't drink and drive. But inevitably, during holidays especially, some people are going to have some alcoholic beverages and they are going to drive. We don't recommend it. Obviously, we're sitting here saying we don't recommend it at all. But you get pulled over. You know what? Michaela wants to ask this question. She already yelled at me before. So I want you to ask the question.
My one question. Okay, hypothetically, if I had literally one drink.
Hypothetically?
No, no, seriously, like one drink,
okay.
like honest engine.
We'll go with the hypothetical.
Okay,
Fine.
well, anyway, one drink and I get pulled over and I'm like, they can obviously smell something. Like, should I?
Well, one drink, most people will be okay. The body's. It depends on what type of drink it is. I mean, if it's like a huge,
like
beer,
a standard drink.
like a standard drink, you should be okay. And there's a lot of factors. It depends on your tolerance. It depends on how much you ate. It depends on how quick you consume the drink. But one drink, usually a person is going to be okay. 1 or 2 drinks. Past that point, it depends. Then you're getting closer and closer to that 0.08 legal limit, and then it becomes the question: do you blow or not blow? In 22 years of doing DUIs, along with many other type of cases, but being a former prosecutor and as a defense attorney, the cases I have found the hardest for the prosecutor to prosecute are the cases where a person does not do the field sobriety exercises, does not blow, and does not talk about how much they had to drink. The less you give, the less they got. And the more defensible the case is. Now, I'm not advocating, drink and drive and not blow or not cooperate, but I'm just saying, objectively, those are the cases hardest to prove.
How does it work, actually? When you get pulled over, do they make you get out of the car and say your alphabet backwards, walk in a straight line? Like, what is the first thing that happens once you get pulled over and they are suspicious that you might have been drinking?
Well, when an officer pulls someone over, they look for these telltale signs, an odor of an alcoholic beverage. And let me say this, from an odor alone, you can't tell what a person drank, how much a person drank, or if a person drank at all, is consumed, it has any consumed any alcohol. Hypothetically, if I take a sip of a beer, chug it down, and spit it out, I might have residual odor, but I have no alcohol in my system. Then they'll look at your eyes. Are they bloodshot, watery, glazy? And from that, from bloodshot, watery eyes, there could be many reasons. Person could be fatigued, could be depressed, could have been, swimming in a pool, been around smoke. So that alone is not a reason. Then they look at the speech. How they talked, and really what I attack the police officers is they don't know how the person normally talks and stuff. But once they get those telltale signs, they will then conduct a DUI investigation, and they'll look at the driving pattern as well, and then they will ask the person to perform those field sobriety exercises, which there are some standard exercises like a walk and turn, standing on one leg for 30 seconds, finger to nose, and they'll do what's called a horizontal gauge nystagmus, which is a pen test, checking how your eyes respond. And my suggestion is never do those exercises. It's a better indication of how a person would perform on a circus than how they drive. And what the police are looking for is they're looking for that person to make a mistake. They're looking for the person not to touch heel to toe. They're looking for the person to sway a little bit. And then that's what they're going to note on their report. This person had this sign, this sign. They could do 10 things right. The one thing they do wrong, they mark it down.
So can I say no to the field sobriety exercises? And if I don't, how can they be used against me in court later?
You can absolutely, and as a criminal defense attorney, I would suggest to refuse to do them, even if you haven't been drinking, or even if you're not impaired at all, because, there could be many reasons why. They are throwing ton of information on a person and expecting them to do it 100% right. And if you miss any of the instructions, they're going to count it against you on their report. At trial, they're going to tell the jury, oh, based on my training and experience, this proves the person was impaired. You absolutely have a right to refuse it. The consequences are the officer's going to say at trial, if it goes that far, he refused to do the exercises. So that must mean he's impaired.
I imagine that you've seen many cases that actually go to trial on DUI where that's the big piece of evidence against someone because they can't stand on two toes and pirouette or whatever.
I can't do that any day.
I can't either. I mean, I can shoot 3-pointers, but I can't do a little dance move. I don't do ballet.
That is the tool they use because objectively, you know, we can attack, you know, the odor, the the speech, the eyes, but they will magnify how this person did these exercises wrong, and there could be many reasons why the person did it wrong.
So whether I don't participate in the field sobriety exercises or I do and they say I fail, what happens from that point forward? Usually
at the point where they're asking you to perform the field sobriety exercise, they have already made their decision. And they will say, I want to see how you perform because I want to see if you're okay to drive. No, they want to get the evidence to back up their decision to make an arrest. Then they will make the arrest almost 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10. They will take the person to a DUI center, and then they will request a sample of their breath.
Got it. So how does that work? So they're going to put me in the back of the cruiser and take me downtown, and then there's literally like this drunk place where they make you blow in something? What is it like?
They take them there. They have them sit for 20 minutes. They observe them, and you know they will request them to perform a breath test. And you know they will tell them that if you refuse to blow, it'll be used against you in court, and your license will be suspended for a year if it's your first time, or 18 months if you've refused before. But they won't tell them if you do blow over a .08, your license is going to be suspended anyways for 6 months, and it will definitely be used against you in court. So, you know, they kind of strong-arm the person into blowing, and a lot of times people feel like they have to. I mean, there are legal consequences for not blowing. I will say that, and that is a decision that person has to make if they're willing to take those legal consequences.
And those consequences, if I don't blow, which I have every right to not blow, that's correct.
Yes.
What are the consequences?
The consequences are the license will be suspended for a year. Usually, if it's your first DUI, you can apply for a hardship. You can attack the suspension in an administrative hearing, but if you've refused before, this is where it gets tricky. If you've ever refused before, I probably wouldn't suggest you refuse again because the second refusal is a crime itself. It's a first-degree misdemeanor, punishable up to a year in jail. And if you've refused before and they can prove that prior refusal, it's also an 18-month suspension.
But if I do blow and I go .09, I mean, that is going to be evidence against me at a trial if we go to trial, and that's very hard to refute, I presume.
Well, if it's minimally over the legal limit, then the question becomes, you know, how always attack the accuracy of the machine, the instrument that is being used, and then also they have got to prove you were at or above the legal limit at the time you were driving. So hypothetically, if it's .09 and I took like 6 shots and I'm driving, at that point, you know, they may pull me over and it hasn't actually, the alcohol hasn't metabolized in my blood system and I may be under a .08. So that's how you attack that.
And I think it's important that I speak directly to you about this because think about it. Your first DUI, is it a slap on the wrist? Pretty much a slap on the wrist. But let me tell you something. I've talked to a lot of people who are at DUI number 2. When you hit DUI number 2 or 3, this is not a slap on the wrist anymore. And that's why you need to fight DUI number 1. And here's how you do so. You call Rajan Joshi today. The phone number is right here on the screen. He will talk to you directly after the show, 321-282-1055. Right, Rajan? The first one, it's more than a slap on the wrist, but it's not horrible. It's not super life-changing for someone. But if that's not right, if you shouldn't have been charged with the first DUI, but you're like, you know what, I don't want to fight it. I don't want to spend the money on a lawyer. That second one gets pretty bad. Yeah,
the second one within 5 years carries a mandatory 10 days in jail. If it's 3 within 10 of the last 2, it's a felony, and it's mandatory 30 days in jail. And a first-time DUI does have some serious consequences. It does have up to 6 months in jail. It does have a license revocation of 6 months. It does have, mandatory community service hours, and it can be an expensive ordeal with the fines, the DUI classes, and all the hardships that it presents. And then you're right. Next time it gets even worse. And so it's important to fight the DUI, because a lot of times if you just go in there and you enter a plea and you don't look at the case itself, you don't look at why the police officer stopped the person. Yeah. I've gotten some of the worst DUIs thrown out because it was an illegal stop, or it was an illegal detention, or we've gotten the breath results thrown out because the breath machine was done improperly. So there's many things to look at, and I urge people not just to give in, to feel like I got arrested, I've been charged, and that is it. It is far from it, I'll say.
Or when the state sees you on the other side and they start seeing you attacking their evidence pre-trial and the months before trial, they see Rajan Joshi's name. They see that you're fighting them. A lot of times it becomes easier for the state to say, okay, we'll call this reckless driving.
Exactly, because when you're going to negotiate, you want to negotiate from a position of strength, not weakness. And you want to make sure the state knows that you're coming from a position of strength when you're going to them, and you break down the case and you let them know, hey, look, we will take a reckless,
right.
or we'll take it to trial.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's where the negotiations happen, is when you attack their evidence.
Rajan Joshi, as always, what a pleasure. Doing a great job for the people of Central Florida. And again, we don't want anyone drinking and driving. Of course, we don't want you drinking and driving. We want you to have an amazing Labor Day. We do. But it's easier to call an Uber. But if for whatever reason you have been charged with a DUI, I'll connect you with Rajan right now. Again, the phone number is 321-282-1055. It's a little hot in here. When we get back, we're going to talk to one chiropractor in here. Then we're going to go outside where it's a little bit cooler as Behind the Law continues.